5 years ago, I posted my first video to YouTube. I had no idea what I was doing or what I was getting myself into. The fact that I ever posted a video to YouTube, convinced myself that it wasn't horrible, and decided to make more still confounds me. I had no video background, had never acted. Heck, before my first video, I had never even owned a camera. Prior to jumping into YouTube, I was a writer. Well, sort of. I was a blogger, which, as we all know, is just graffiti with punctuation, and even that was something I never thought I'd do. My story of YouTube, I guess you could say, started all the way back to the time when I was discerning Franciscan life. I found plenty of books on Franciscan theology and history, official documents about the ideal life, but almost nothing by way of testimony. No one wanted to share what the actual day-to-day life was like. And so in 2011, 3 weeks before I entered the Friars, I decided that I would do that. It might be cool, I thought, to let people journey with me, to see what this life was like, to demystify wild imaginations of what being a friar meant. My focus wasn't to teach theology, it wasn't to offer social commentary. It was simply to share the joys and difficulties and struggles that were shaping me and the ways that I was hopefully shaping this life. And since what we wear is called a habit, a garment that was very influential in my discernment, I knew just what to call it. Breaking in the habit. So for 4 years, that's what I did. I wrote reflections about my life. I let people look behind the curtain, and I was happy doing that. Until one day, my classmate came to me asking for a favor. He was graduating from his school in California and needed someone to help him move back to DC. Would I take a week and drive with him? The wheels in my head immediately started to turn. What if I blogged about it, inviting people to follow our journey? What if we stopped at different friaries along the way and took pictures of the many ways we live? What if I got a camera, hear me out, and we recorded it all? Our trip, interviews with friars, the places they minister. A look at brothers going out on mission, 2 by 2, just like Francis did. Just like that, a channel was born. The province gave me some money for a camera, we hit the road, and just went with it. The overall project never really turned out the way I had hoped, but at the end of it all, I had successfully produced videos and people were watching them. At my summer assignment that year, I connected with a parishioner who loved the idea, and the two of us just experimented with it. What if I offered short reflections on the Sunday readings? Done. What if I got someone to interview me about all the tough questions of our world and we just ran the camera? Great. What if I got parishioners to ask me common questions I get asked all the time and I give quick, sort of funny answers? Money. It was an incredible summer. I really had no idea what I was doing, and even the simplest of editing tasks caused serious frustrations. I stayed up late at night watching tutorials, learning the software, practicing different techniques, just seeing what was possible. Welcome to the Breaking in the Habit YouTube channel. For those of you new to Breaking in the Habit, my name is Brother Casey Cole. And despite what you might be thinking, no, I am not a part of a Renaissance fair. And no, I am not a Jedi. As cool as that would be, I'm a Franciscan friar, a member of the Roman Catholic Church following the way and life of St. Francis of Assisi. Looking back to the videos I made in those first 8 weeks, I can't help but cringe. How can you not? They're poorly composed, my voice is weird, I sound awkward, just everything. Honestly, I knew all of that back then, but there was just something so exciting about it, an opportunity revealing itself, a passion within me that needed to be explored. Over the next year, I ran with it in every which way. What could this new thing be? I was immensely afraid of failing, but apparently just had enough courage to give new things a try. For a while, I had a segment called Ask Brother Casey, where I'd sit in my room and answer a different question every 2 weeks. Periodically, I'd give a reflection on a particular topic or reading. Being in seminary, I had a wealth of resources all around me, so I thought I'd get some of my professors to explain some tricky topics in a new series called Catholicism in Focus. I even got a local composer to arrange an original work for the opening. Things were all over the place at the beginning, in part because I was trying new things, but mostly because I was trying to find my voice. I remember distinctly saying over and over that I did not want to come off as an expert. It wasn't who I was, and that wasn't the mission of breaking in the habit. I wasn't a theologian, I wasn't an expert in anything, except maybe my own experience. I wanted to stick to what I had always done on the blog. Share what I know, not necessarily what I thought people needed to hear. For the first year, actually, I continued to treat YouTube as a secondary mission to the blog, an extension meant to attract people to the real mission, my writing. The opening clip I used for videos even included the little tagline, Video Edition, because in my eyes, this wasn't the real breaking in the habit. But something changed by the end of the first year. While I only had about 1,600 subscribers, certainly nothing to brag about, I realized that the channel had gotten as many views in 1 year as my blog had in 4 years combined. Believe it or not, people like to watch videos more than they like to read. Something needed to change. And so when I went out on my internship that year, I decided to give it a little more of my time, to really test what this thing could be. Was it just a hobby, something I did on the side but would never really be good at? Or is this something more? It was during this year that I made my first channel trailer video, building a little story out of clips I shot and color graded myself. I experimented with new styles, really working to understand how lighting worked, how the videos could be more than just a pretty message, how the visual elements could tell a story of their own. My name is Brother Casey Cole, and I'm working to break in a few good habits in my life. This simple cloth and rope that I wear, and the life it represents. At one point, I had this idea to talk about the many problems that we face wearing the habit, something informative but mostly funny. But instead of using the style of the top 10 questions video, basically just a talking head, I wanted to show it. Set up scenes, capture in live action all the things I was talking about. Originally, habits were made out of very thick wool, making them ideal for winter weather. Now, being quite thin, they're pretty useless when it comes to cold weather and snow, and we need to wear either sweatshirts underneath or coats on top. And depending on the type of jacket, putting it on without embarrassing yourself is an art form. To this day, it is still one of my favorite videos I have ever filmed, and I would love to do more like it. The video was such a hit, at least by my standards, that the channel just blew up. I got messages from people all around the world, and lo and behold, a few months later I was approached by Franciscan media. Would I be interested in creating a Lenten series for them? In that moment, I thought I had made it. Not only did it offer a bit of a quid pro quo, and then I used the opportunity to pitch what would ultimately be my first book, the series turned out to be momentous. I borrowed a second camera, bribed a friend to help me record it, invested in some stock footage, and put hours upon hours into making what was, at the time, the greatest thing I have ever made. In just 7 weeks, my views tripled. Subscribers shot up by 1,000. I wasn't just speaking to a small group of people who knew me. There were thousands of people who thought what I was doing was pretty cool, that wanted me to make more, to keep going. And so, I did. A month later, I started traveling to different friaries with a simple goal in mind: capture the diversity of our lives as Franciscans. A friar life. What does it look like? Outside of Sunday Mass, beyond the walls of the church, what is a normal day in the life of a friar? If there's one thing I've learned, it's that there is no one answer to that question. Founded not to perform specific tasks, but to live the gospel purely and simply, there are as many ways to be a Franciscan as there are Franciscans. That's what I set up to capture in the new Breaking in the Habit series, A Friar Life. Invited into the lives of the brothers to film them in action, I found that not only is the life of every friar unique, each day in the life of the same friar can be different from the last. What unites us is not the routine we follow or the jobs we do, it's the charism of St. Francis that guides the way we see and interact with the world. If you're discerning religious life, or simply curious to learn more about these men who devote their lives to Christ, join me each Friday as we take a glimpse into what makes our life a friar life. I mean, really, why just talk about the values of Franciscan life? Why just write about what fraternity means? I had a camera, a new set of skills. Why not let them say it in their own voice, showing their lives as it's actually lived? To this day, the A Friar Life series remains unique to the channel as the only videos I've ever made in which I don't appear on screen. For once, I got to stand behind the camera, planning the shots, building a story without having to remember lines or be entertaining. I could experiment with camera movements, capture things that I thought were interesting and beautiful, and told a story without saying a word. And I loved every moment of it. Honestly, if I had the time and a willing set of actors, I would never appear on camera again. I don't need this. I love making videos, not necessarily appearing in them. To make short films, to tell a story, to let others shine while I make it all work, that's the sort of stuff that really interests me. Now, finding a willing set of actors, finding partners in this business, that's another story. So just as I got into blogging because I wasn't finding anyone doing what I was interested in and I was tired of complaining, I forged ahead with the videos, mostly alone, mostly with me at the center, because that's all I really had to work with. As that second year came to a close, I felt the mission of breaking the habit starting to shift in big ways. My confidence was starting to develop, dreams becoming more realistic. Whereas before I was intent on sticking to issues of discernment in Franciscan life, this was beginning to run its course. How many more ways could I really repackage those themes? Nearly a solemnly professed friar at the time, more than 2 full years of theological study under my belt, other interests were budding. I spent months over the summer thinking about who I was, what I was good at, what the world needed, and started to craft a mission statement, to lay out a vision for the next year. It was at this time that I knew I needed to answer that big question from before. Did I stay as I was, posting every few weeks, giving just a little of my time to a small, barely growing project? Or did I commit to making it what it needed to be, a full-time ministry? In August of 2017, now a solemnly professed friar, I decided to go for it. I approached my provincial and asked permission to consider it an independent ministry, able to raise my own funds and devote considerable time and resources to it. My little camera was okay, asking for a couple $100 every time I needed something worked for a while, but these things were holding me back and slowing me down. Happily, my provincial was incredibly supportive, and I quickly found myself basically the head of a production company. I upgraded my equipment, built a makeshift studio, hired a graphic designer to develop a new introduction for Catholicism in Focus, and started producing a video every week. The grind had begun. Within a few months, the routine was set and I started to expand again. Instead of just writing reflections and posting them on my blog, I decided to convert them to video form. And what do you know? Within 2 months, I was up from a video every 2 weeks to 2 videos a week.
Treat others the way you are who you are and want to have what you have and go where you're going. In other words, how does your life witness to Jesus Christ and the kingdom of God?
By the end of that first semester back in school, things got even bigger. I started receiving speaking requests, giving me the opportunity to do what I truly love, which is to preach and to explore a yet untapped medium in the YouTube world, vlogging.
Today, we're going on a journey.
Folks, let me tell you, there is nothing more awkward in the entire world than talking to a camera in public, sometimes needing multiple takes while wearing a religious habit. I had come a long way since my first video, but it was definitely not something I was comfortable with at the time. Or now. Which, at this point, you're probably beginning to see a sort of underlying theme to this whole journey. I don't always feel confident in what I'm doing, but something tells me to try it anyway. Ultimately, this leap into something new and the countless hours that went into it eventually paid off, because in January of that 3rd year, things began to pop. Without the help of a famous priest's endorsement or having my work promoted by a company with hundreds of thousands on their mailing list, things just began to fall into place and really grow on their own. And it was weird. All of a sudden, people began to know who I was. On the one hand, I was getting compliments and letters of encouragement from people in the Catholic world, mentions from bishops, which is utterly flattering. But on the other hand, I was getting hate mail and started to see my name appear on angry blog posts. Assumptions were made about my personal life, criticisms thrown out about my character. My theological training was belittled. I started to get a lot of just mean people writing me. Really, there is no way that you can completely prepare for this sort of change in life. But I do remember a friend telling me right after I posted my first few videos that I better have my prayer life in order because I was gonna need it. He said if you're not right with God, not grounded in who you are and what your mission is, the devil is going to tear you down when you put yourself out there. He may have been a few years late, but was definitely right on. Despite being fairly careful in what I posted, avoiding hot button topics, just trying to be a nice, inspiring figure, there were some people that just didn't like me and wanted me to know that. Which, as you can imagine, is no pleasant experience at all, but as I soon came to find, nowhere near the most challenging part of being in this world. Negative comments are easy enough just to brush off. What's far worse, really, is not hearing any comments at all. Halfway through my 4th year, I had a bit of a breakdown. Grinding out 2 or 3 videos a week, I wasn't seeing much growth, wasn't feeling a lot of enthusiasm to continue, and started to wonder if my time on YouTube had run its course. In January of that year, I posted a video called, "Am I Even Making a Difference?" in which I shared what would become a defining struggle for me over the next year and a half. Was I burning out? You see, YouTube is not a pure meritocracy. Working hard and putting out high-quality, consistent stuff doesn't necessarily lead to success. Sometimes you can put in hundreds of hours of work and see no results at all, just stagnant in views, stagnant in subscribers. With the exception of a few sporadic successes, everything was just kind of okay. Nothing seemed to take me to the next level. I tried an in-depth series on the Mass, vlogged while traveling 9,000 miles on a speaking tour, posted some homilies, put weeks into a professional-style Lenten series. And the internet sort of just said, meh, okay. Videos I thought that would just explode with popularity did the same as other videos. No worse, but no better. Even the second series of A FRIAR Life, now with better equipment, with a director who actually knew what he was doing, just kind of passed by without a whole lot of fanfare. By the time I was preparing for ordination, I was having some real doubts about the future of this ministry. Sure, it was a great idea, but was it worth the energy I was putting in? Were other things, now as a priest, more worthy of my time? On paper, I knew that evangelization was a part of priestly ministry, that it wasn't just a side hobby. Christ was priest, prophet, and king, and so as his minister, I am supposed to be all three. Being on YouTube was never a contradiction to my priesthood in itself. But being on YouTube, taking time away from other fruitful endeavors, from things that were impactful and life-giving to me and the world, when YouTube was stagnant and sucking life out of me, this was something I began to question. In preparation for my ordination, I took 2 months in which I filmed only 1 new video. It was a time to step away, to reevaluate the mission of the ministry, to dream big. You see, when you're in the thick of it, just producing because you have to, just grinding it out, you can't always see the big picture. I realized that I was churning things out pretty quickly, not because I had something particular that I wanted to say, not because each individual video was something I was immensely proud of, but simply because you need to keep going if you want to gain more subscribers. And that was the problem right there, at least a big part of it. I realized in this time that I was more concerned with expanding the mission, of gaining new people to speak to, than I was with coming up with something worthwhile to actually say to them. In my pursuit to gain subscribers and please people, I committed myself to being careful of what I said and focused on making things based on what I thought people wanted to hear. But this was never the mission of breaking in the habit. It's not the mission of evangelization. In fact, it's the antithesis of the work of a prophet. I realized that if this was going to continue, the spirit of the channel had to go through another iteration. The goals had to be reevaluated. This thing couldn't be about numbers. It couldn't be about pleasing people. It had to be about proclaiming the gospel and changing hearts. And so, I tried some new things this year, let my hair down a little bit. Catholicism in Focus episodes began to include some debatable topics, issues of morality, social justice, and apologetics, topics that I knew would spark some controversy, but ones that I felt passionately about and felt needed to be said. These were things that I probably would have shied away from in previous years. Likewise, reflections began to look a little bit more towards the world, to offer a bit of social commentary that had never existed in my work before. I wrote an open letter to Christians, criticized people who entered seminary for the wrong reasons, shared how the church had let me down over the years, and most recently, offered a reaction to the pandemic protesters and a response to racism among the faithful. Simply having friendly relationships with people, simply doing charitable work for them, does not mean that you are in solidarity with them, that you value their life and experience as much as your own. And that's a problem. I might be crazy, but I'm pretty sure God loves all of his children and wants us to do the same. In one of my homilies, I drew attention to the gross inequalities being brought to light by the pandemic, denouncing the greed of our world and calling people to change the way we treat each other. Were these well received by everyone? You know they weren't. Hundreds of people unsubscribed, but that's okay. As I decided last summer, I wasn't gonna let the numbers dictate the mission anymore. I wasn't gonna wait until I had a bigger audience to say what I always wanted to say, really what I joined the Friars to proclaim. If I was gonna keep devoting time and effort to this ministry, it had to be with a more prophetic voice. Does this mean that everything I did this year was serious or controversial? Of course not. I didn't all of a sudden become a contrarian. The mission, at its core, has always remained the same: to engender a love for the faith, to help people put their faith into action. And so, at times this year, that meant creating funny videos simply to make people laugh, something I hadn't done for years. I told jokes, shared a disaster of an embarrassing story, even had an infomercial to promote my audiobook. They can be heavy and tough to carry. Sharp edges and pointy corners can be downright dangerous. And forget about multitasking, reading a book requires your full attention. Hi, my name is Father Casey Cole, and for centuries, if you wanted to learn new stories, open yourself up to engaging ideas, or even experience imaginative worlds, you were stuck with these terrible things: physical books. Well, not anymore. Lately, I've been engaging with pop culture, offering a list of great Catholic movies and a Christian interpretation of Mumford & Sons music. I've answered questions, taken on apologetics topics, and tried to get to the essence of what it is about our faith that I love. At one point, I literally listed out 50 things to love about being Catholic. For me, that has been the common thread throughout this year, something that I think has influenced just about everything I've done. More than anything else, I want every video I produce to be something that helps people fall deeper in love, that shakes them out of the way they were thinking or doing things, and radically changes their lives for the sake of discipleship. Sometimes this means softening people with laughter. Sometimes it means making them feel uncomfortable or angry. Sometimes it means engaging the world we live in and showing that the church is relevant, that it has something to say. And even though what it has to say may not always be popular or easy, it is beautiful and good and true. Do I have everything figured out at this point? Is this the final iteration of the mission? Not a chance. At the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing or what I was getting myself into, and to some extent, nothing has changed. After 5 years, I feel like I've learned so much, and yet I'm always going back to right where I started. What's my voice in this? What is the point in devoting so much time and effort to this strange world? It's been a wild ride, to say the least, and it's amazing to look back and see all that I've done. Mistakes have certainly been made, and there will be many more to come, I'm sure. But it's a journey I don't regret for a second. I don't know what lies ahead, but I can tell you that I am at a better place now in terms of knowing the mission, of being grounded in what I'm called to do, than I've ever been. I've got some big ideas for the future, and so we'll just have to see what the next 5 years will bring. Whew, this video was obviously a bit long, and so I want to thank you if you stuck all the way through to the end. But really, this YouTube experience has been a long one, and so I want to thank the many of you who have stuck with me for years. Thank you, all of you, for your support over the years, for encouraging comments, sharing my videos, donating to the mission. It is not a stretch to say that it would not have been possible without you, and so I say again, thank you, and God bless.